The first cries came from the ridge above the valley, where evening wind carried sound like wire. Women at the ovens looked up, dogs went quiet. Beyond the fields, men were moving in a line too straight to be hunters. They were taller than most, broad through the chest, long-legged even on broken ground. A boy near the threshing floor said he felt them before he saw them, the way you feel thunder in your ribs. It had started years earlier, when beings not born of earth looked down and saw daughters of men and wanted them. The elders later called them messengers, who crossed a boundary they were sworn to keep. The young called them watchers because nothing escaped their notice. They came at dusk, did not hide what they were, and spoke to fathers like negotiators, offering gifts that made a hard life easier. A few houses accepted before anyone knew how fast a village can skid off its footing. Children followed who grew too quickly and stood too far above their mothers by the time they were 10. They learned iron while others chipped stone. They ran without drinking, fought without tiring, and treated pain like weather. Rumors reached other valleys that men here could lift an ox by the yoke and crack a boar's neck with both hands. Power brought appetite. The watchers taught their wives how to draw signs in dust to sway the uncertain and how to mix roots that made minds swim. They taught smiths to pull metal from rock and draw it into blades that kept an edge through bone. The first time a man behind such a blade named himself king, the elders rose from the council floor and left without a word. Gates multiplied. Men who had shared wells now posted guards and wrote new rules on clay. Then came the taking. A family that refused a match found its roof on the ground by morning. A caravan carrying a promised daughter tried to divert to another town and was turned back at the ford by men who called themselves kin under a new law. A boy who spoke against the newcomers woke to his father bound and his mother bargaining, while strangers traced lines on the floor and spoke words that bent the room. Villages took sides until there were no sides left that weren't bleeding. Mothers barred doors, stacked stones against them, and slept in shifts. Leaders sent runners and met under tamarisk where the ground kept sound. Each told what had happened and heard the same pattern repeated. Marriages forced by pressure, children who demanded double, judges elbowed aside by men too large to argue with and too quick to use their hands. They sent word to distant kin to come in numbers. While they waited, they climbed a hill and watched the river twist below. One old farmer said the ridge would bring a flood long before the clouds did. At night, the watchers sat apart and used a language that worked in the throat like gravel. They drew arcs in air and measured shadows by stars. They counted births and planned as if time were a field to seed. When they laughed, nearby men clenched fists without meaning to. There were still men who would not bend. One builder kept his plumb line true and refused coin earned by scare tactics. He told his sons to carry water to old neighbors when the strong claimed the wells, and he walked with the few who still wanted clean hands. He taught his boys to cut wood straight, to keep pitch off their skin, and to answer the door only in daylight. When asked why he would not adjust to the times, he said a man should not call power justice. The flood did not begin with rain. It began with law that bent under pressure, with courts that closed early when big men arrived, with meat torn from living animals, with songs at night that sounded like victory while other houses mourned. It began with fathers selling futures over cups of wine and the scrape of a whetstone. It began with soldiers who smiled when they broke bread and never looked at the hands that baked it. When the rain finally came, it only confirmed what the ground already knew. The first storm looked like any hard season. Then, the wind changed and did not change back. Water filled gullies and stayed. When small houses started to lean, carpenters begged for time to brace them and were told to build walls for the strong instead. Then the river left its bed. The men who had explained the sky fell silent. Talk cannot stop water when the earth lets go. Families lashed doors with rope and climb to rooftops to wait out noises no one had names for. Boats appeared in the lowlands, heavy timber stitched with pitch, ribs wide as doorways, decks braced to carry more than grain. Neighbors said one had been taking shape for years on a rise above the floodplain, each plank fitted as if its builder could hear something no one else heard. When the water reached his ankles, the builder's family hauled stores aboard and drove wedges home. Neighbors shouted for space. He threw lines and pulled as many as he could without capsizing. People who once laughed at the builder found themselves holding to his gunwale and shaking. By the third week, the valley was a gray sheet with roofs and treetops like islands. Bodies drifted tangled in reeds. The strongest swam farthest and lasted longest, but swimming bought minutes, not an end. The loudest men were the last to call for help and the first to curse when help did not come. The watchers tried to order the water the way they ordered their houses, hands carving signs in air. A wave answered by tipping one from a rock and rolling him under. The rest learned the same lesson in turn, one by one. The builder's boat cleared fences and walls and the old markers that had kept people apart. Inside, the work was simple and endless. Feeding, cleaning, keeping order in air thick with pitch, sweat, and the sharp smell of penned animals. Night sounds were steady and necessary. Hooves shifting, water striking planks, a child coughing, the groan of a beam. When grief rose too high for words, his wife pressed his hand until it settled. In the pauses, they prayed without moving their lips. When the hull kissed ground, it did so without ceremony, the way a cart stops at the end of a road. The family waited until the earth took their weight without trying to slide away. They stepped into a world scraped clean. A few stones marked where a village had been. The ridge where the watchers had first appeared was just another slope with grass. The air smelled rinsed, and the silence felt deeper because there were no late songs to cut it. They set a small fire and watched sparks vanish into clear air. People hearing this later argue about the sons of God and the size of giants and how the sky was crossed to make any of it happen. The older ones shake their heads and say, the point is simpler. Knowledge without humility took what it wanted until water was the only answer left. In time, new towns rose, new judges sat, and boys learned to draw water before they learned to draw knives. Fathers remembered the ridge and kept their daughters close when strangers asked too many questions at the gate. Mothers taught that strength is not license, and that a house stands when its doors are promises, not boasts. What remains of that valley lies under layers of silt and memory. Stand on any ridge as weather turns, and you will understand enough. Rules can be broken quickly, and broken rules invite forces that do not bargain. Thank you for listening to Divine Crime. Subscribe for more true stories from the most dangerous book ever written.